Yay, Katie Porter!
Hello, how are you all?
It's so nice to see you. You look great, by the way.
Thank you.
So let me give you your introduction and then so I can pass this off to you. It is an honor to have you here, Representative Porter. So Katie Porter is a nationally renowned leader in the fight to protect consumers, taxpayers, and the middle-class families. First as a consumer protection advocate, and now as a member of Congress, Katie has won big victories against Wall Street and stood up to pharmaceutical companies, oil and gas giants, and corporate lobbyists who cheat Californians. And you are presenting on the Inflation Reduction Act. Yay, Katie!
Yay! Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I just got home last night, and I have to leave again in about 2 hours. So one of my projects in Congress is trying to change the calendar so we waste less jet fuel and can do more work for the American people. So there's a climate project embedded even in congressional representation and the nature of how we do it. But I want to start by thanking Sean and Redwood Energy for having me here to speak at your 14th Zero Carbon Retreat. And I just want to emphasize, there's so much to say about zero carbon, but I just want to emphasize the first word I said, 14th. You have been teaching Americans for more than a decade how we can reduce and in some cases eliminate our carbon footprint. And Americans are awake and ready and need people who are experts, who are trusted experts in how to deliver this for every family. And so I want to just applaud your dedication to decarbonizing homes, your work to make home electrification more affordable, more accessible. And I know there are so many great speakers throughout the day today who are going to give you more information about that. For those of you who don't know, I'm starting this is my third term in Congress. So the start of my 5th year, and it is the start of my 2nd term, my 3rd year serving on the House Natural Resources Committee. I absolutely love it. My Democratic colleagues and I focus on protecting our public lands, wildlife, reducing our oil and gas footprint, and ways we can increase the sustainable use of nature. I'm also a proud member of the Sustainable Energy and Environment Coalition, where I co-chair their task force on climate security and national security, which is a huge area where we have a ton of low-hanging, very easy, very important work to do. Now, just last fall, as Sean mentioned, Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and that's what I'm going to focus on today. But feel free to ask me about other energy environment related questions you might have. And the Inflation Reduction Act is the largest investment to combat climate change in our nation's history. Yay. It's also important to say it's not enough. And there's 2 things I want to focus on with the not enough. One is this deals with a lot of the home electrification issues that you all work on, but it doesn't deal with some of the other things we have to work on, which is reforming our oil and gas leasing system. We got a big victory into that as well as part of it, but making sure that we're not subsidizing, taxpayers are not subsidizing the fossil fuel industry to the detriment of the clean energy industry. So there's more to do. The second part about the Inflation Reduction Act is a law on paper is worth exactly nothing. What matters is a law in real people's lives. So how are we going to translate these provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act into actually decarbonizing homes, decarbonizing buildings, and reducing our carbon footprint? So President Biden signed the law August 16th, and I think Sean will tell you that since that day, I have been asking him, how soon can I fix this horrible carbon kitchen where half these appliances don't work? And so right now I've been trying to reduce my footprint by repairing existing appliances, but I need to replace some of these, including my gas cooktop. I don't have a heat pump. I want one desperately. I have an old furnace system and no air conditioning. So I am going to be very excited to be taking advantage of some of these benefits. But I'm also, like most Americans, trying to figure out what these mean. How do I use them? When do they start? Can I get them now? Do I have to wait? How do I qualify? So there's a lot of devil in the details here, and we're going to need trusted emissaries, including the folks on this call, to help explain these benefits to the American people. And that is particularly true for renters. So I'm very, very glad to see the theme of your conference this year, renters, renters, renters. I think it is so important. I think they very often get forgotten. in a lot of kinds of conversations about not just home energy, but housing policy more broadly, tax policy more broadly. And as housing costs soar in California and around the country, we need to rethink, how do we let people be in rental properties in a way that lets them have some of the benefits of stability, controlling their environment, having healthy living environments that we give to homeowners. So the Inflation Reduction Act, as you know, makes critical developments in a lot of innovative technologies, thermal energy storage, which is going to be huge to helping us reduce energy consumption, increased wind power manufacturing right here in the United States, and then tries to have this range of tax credits and rebates, a little bit of a complicated mixture there of things to make these products affordable for folks. So we're talking again about things like heat pumps, that's top of my list, induction stove, actually maybe stove, top of my list, and heat pump close second, all of those things. And the idea here is to increase demand at the same time that we are supporting the manufacture and deployment of these technologies, manufactured hopefully right here in the United States. So we don't want to create a supply crisis or this scarcity around these electric products. We want to make sure that we're ramping up supply and ramping up the ability of people to use them. Otherwise, we'll see the price increase and they get less affordable, again, for lower income and moderate income Americans, including renters. So I'm glad to say that renters are not left out of the equation this time. They are eligible for many of the same benefits provided to homeowners. That means they can purchase appliances like a heat pump or an induction stove. You do not have to own your home to be eligible for that. But of course, if you don't own your home, the retrofit may need a landlord's cooperation. And so there's going to be a lot of work here helping renters talk to landlords, having landlords understand that this is what renters want, that this is cost effective for their land, for their property, and this is going to make their property more attractive in the future and make it a more safe property for their tenant. So we want to think too about working with landlords on things like retrofitting buildings for better insulation, upgraded circuit panels, windows, communal laundry rooms. These things are all things that a landlord can do to help reduce the carbon footprint of their building and the renters who live there, and those are eligible for sizable rebates and incentives. So I feel really good about the potential here. Where I'm sort of focusing is on the rollout and on the communication, because I did a lot of my work. Sean mentioned I started my career working on foreclosure prevention, and there were a lot of renters who were evicted during the foreclosure crisis. Not just homeowners, but renters were the most hurt. And we always see problems in kind of thinking through, how do we get information out to those who maybe have the least resources, the least time, the least expertise, the least control over where they live. And you all are going to be critical for things like that. The other part about the IRA I just want to mention is the transportation provisions. These are also really, really important. We're talking about things like port infrastructure, decarbonization opportunities for some of our heavier equipment that cannot necessarily go electric, but there may be intermediate opportunities for. I'm very excited about the work I've done on hydrogen for ports. This is a big environmental justice issue. The communities around ports tend to be lower income communities of color that are exposed to a lot of pollution. I've also been pushing hard on expanding and changing how the clean school bus program works. So fun fact for those of you who are Californians on this call, California has the second lowest rate of kids riding a school bus in the nation. We are ahead of only Mississippi. And what this means, and if you're a parent, you've seen it, cars idling 20, 30, 40 minutes in line to get to school pickup and school drop off, taking time away from working parents, adding to their costs, adding pollution. The teachers and school staff and kids who stand around those idling cars waiting for environments are not enjoying clean air, even in their school space. So the Clean School Bus Program is terrific. I'm a big advocate for it, but Congress passed a provision in there that limited California to only getting 10%. Well, there's two problems with that. One, We have 13% of the nation's school children, and we have disproportionately more than that of school children who don't have a busing opportunity at all. So as we expand busing in California, we need to be doing it in a green way. The second thing is when they rolled out the first phase of the Clean School Bus Program, we only got 7%. 7%. And we have about 14% of the nation's school children. So I've been working hard to try to make sure California isn't penalized or held back for having been a carbon leader. We need to actually be recognized and lifted up because we are going to be at the fore of decarbonization. We're going to pilot it. We're going to figure it out. We have some of the infrastructure to go further and faster. And as the largest state in the nation, that really, really matters. So I'm very, very excited about working on some of these transit-related issues as well. My office is going to be continuing to work with so many of you on this call to think about how can we best communicate these incentives, these benefits to everyday people. So I plan to make very public my effort to move to an induction stovetop. I'm going to show everybody how I tried to figure out what benefit I could get, how I shopped, what dumb questions I might have to ask, who can I go to for resources, what scams might be out there, how do I find a qualified contractor who's going to spot opportunities to further decarbonize, down to like, what do I do with my old pots and pans? Where can they go so that they don't get wasted if I have to switch some of those up? So as you can see, I have lots to say about this topic. I'm very, very enthusiastic about it. And my real push right now is making sure that my colleagues in Washington are not just patting themselves on the back for having passed the Inflation Reduction Act, but are instead extending a hand to their constituents to figure out how to make use of the provisions. And I think this is an area where Washington has a lot of room to grow, and I'm going to be pushing it to do exactly that. So thank you so much for having me, Sean. I have about 5 minutes left because I talked a little more, but if you have a couple quick questions, I'm delighted to answer them.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, I have one question that you can mull over, and there's tons over on the side there, but question for you is, so California's investor-owned utilities charge the nation's highest electricity rates and some of the highest gas rates, and they're regressively highest for low-income renters due to the fixed fees. So what can Congress do? This is like a statewide problem that's not being solved in California.
Yeah. So look, I think we have to push our California elected officials to do something about that. There is a California Public Utility Commission. It's not out of our hands. We need to elect folks to that and be noisy with the Public Utility Commission about what we need them to do. But I do think there's a role for Congress to step in here and say, we're going to provide incentives. We're going to for decentralized utilities. We're going to provide incentives for more grid resilience, more duplication, for more community choice energy, done in a responsible, thoughtful way. And so I think that there is room for Congress to focus on those things. Corporations in Washington, frankly, have too much power. And that is a big problem when we talk about our carbon footprint, because we're talking about the big corporations who have the industries like big oil of the past and investor-owned utilities of the past, being able to block our progress toward the future. And when you look at a lot of our global competitor nations, they don't face that same problem because, frankly, corporations have less of a strong chokehold on elected officials and on the political process. So one of the things I think we have to do is be willing to stand up to corporate power. If you are an investor in a public utility, and you might be surprised to find out you are, get involved, be noisy, pressure them to do more here, and work with advocacy groups who have long represented low-income people, maybe on other issues beyond energy, to pressure. But I think what we've seen just traditionally is saying, well, let's offer some energy assistance. Let's provide cash assistance to make it easier for people to afford their electric or gas bill. But what that's really doing is just subsidizing an industry that's harming all of us and not addressing climate change in a responsible way, and sometimes engaged in outright greenwashing. So I think we need to move. I want to make sure that everybody's able to keep the lights on, keep the power on, and be safe. But what we're doing right now is really using our tax dollars to subsidize fossil fuels rather than using them to help lower income people get on cleaner and better energy sources that reduce the ability of big utilities to price gouge them.
Thank you. Now, pardon me. Nick Peterson asks, Representative Porter, he says, we need federal policy and standards on vehicles that are vehicle to grid. And this is something like 2019 has had the ability to make their Tesla cars serve the grid, but they still haven't. And so there might be a role for the federal government to try to make electric vehicles help the grid. And
I think that's a great point. And I think one of the things that we have an opportunity on right now is where we don't have much electrification of vehicles or other places, we can skip over some of the problems that those of us who are early adopters in California have had to deal with. So I think that's a great point. I encourage you to reach out to Anthony in my office and talk about that, or Nat. They're my two environmental staffers and they're terrific. But I think that's exactly right. We're leaving energy we're letting it dissipate. We're losing the opportunity to put it back into the system, and we should do that. So I am excited to have been with you today. I'm sorry I have to leave, but thank you. This will not be the last you'll see and hear of me talking about green energy, talking about home electrification. And I just want to, again, salute you for focusing on renters, a population that is too often living in situations in which they're dealing with the most pollution, the most exposure to toxic substances, and the least opportunity to enjoy clean air, clean water, and other things. So thank you for focusing on our most vulnerable in your conference, and I look forward to continuing being your partner.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Madam Porter. Thank you.